Since well before Victor Hugo looked up at Notre Dame and thought, what if a hunchback lived in there? Authors have been inspired by Paris. Welcome to the Storytime in Paris podcast on Paris Underground Radio, where we keep that tradition alive by showcasing an author with a French connection in each episode. Every episode will feature 5 questions asked by you, our author's biggest fans, and answered live on air. Then, our authors will treat us to a reading of an excerpt from their book. Who knows? Maybe you'll even be inspired to write your own great French novel. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of speaking with Diane Forrest, author of I Did It My Ways. Diane is an 86-year-old international stand-up comedienne. In her many incarnations, she's been a Bostonian housewife, a cabaret performer, a New York nightclub singer, a Paris swinger, and so much more. I met Diane a few years ago when she came on as a guest on a podcast I was working on at the time. I was immediately enthralled. She's a natural storyteller, sweeping you up in the stories of her life. We stayed talking for hours, and I honestly could have just kept listening. There are a few people who truly suck the marrow out of life, but Diane is one of them. She is inspirational and aspirational. So, please let me introduce you to Diane Forrest, author of I Did It My Ways. Hello, Diane. Thank you so much for being here on the Storytime in Paris podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. What a thrill to be talking.
It's nice to see you again. It's been a while. You look wonderful. 3 or 4
years. Well, I do my best. Remember, it's New York, and we always do a little something to try to stay young.
So before we go too much further, can you introduce yourself and your book?
Yeah, I'm Diane Forrest. I live in Greenwich Village. I'm originally from Boston, but I've been here in New York City for about 40, 50 years. And I lived in Paris for a couple of years and gone back and forth since 1955. And now, of course, I'm in New York. So to get through the pandemic, I had to get myself occupied. I went to Southampton, played golf, and then I wrote a book, a memoir called I Did It My Ways. And it's something I was in 50s, 60s in Paris all through the years, but it was in the 60s in Paris when I had a real fun time being a divorcee and wanting to explore life. And then and there, I went around Paris, had a ball. I love France. I'm a true Francophile, and I kept coming back. So to keep I've always wanted to write the book, but you don't know how. Finally, I got a British fellow who is British French, in Paris, who is very famous, Stephen Clark. So he helped me write this book to keep me occupied during the pandemic. And we started in the beginning of February, and the book finally came out with the cover and everything. The launch date was also February this year, February 14th. I always wanted to do it, but you never get to these things. Well, I got to it. I played golf, and then I'd write the stories, etc. I did it. So first it was 85 pages. I said that wasn't enough. So then we put in more stories and conversation, vignettes and feelings. And now the book's, I guess, about 260 pages or so. What I love about it is that people I haven't heard from in years have found out about the book, and they're calling me up or writing me questions on the internet. And I mean, it's very, very gratifying. Thank God.
That's wonderful. And that actually leads me to my first question, which is, I know you collaborated with Stephen Clark, but how does it actually work when you're collaborating with someone else about your own life?
Well, for the last 20 years, I've been doing comedy. And so I have to do 6 minutes here, 8 minutes there. And I mostly worked in Paris and New York. And of course, I wrote all these stories that would be funny and interesting. And I kept them over the years. And I had them, but I didn't know how to put them together so people would be interested. I didn't know how to do it. So I met Stephen a couple of years ago, and he helped me put on shows in Paris. And I've done one-woman shows too, many of them, like 6 or 7 in America and in Paris. The last one is Swinging on the Seine, which I did a couple of years ago on a couple of boats in Paris. I just didn't know how to put it all together. You know, I've read memoirs and I did this, I did that, and I did this. Boring as hell. Excuse my language. So I needed to make sure that people would be interested in the beginning to the end. And so I figured Stephen might want to. Well, the first couple of years I knew him, he wouldn't do it. He's too busy writing his own books. Finally, a year ago, he said, okay, I'll do it. And so what I did is send him all my vignettes for the 20 years. And then he would say, oh, we need more information. We need more. So he made me write lots of more stuff. And it was like in the middle of the summer, I'm playing golf in Maine. And he says, I want to hear about how you felt after your parents' death. I says, I don't want to talk about my parents' death. I'm in Maine. But he made me, as we say in America, he nudged me to write more and more and more. And I needed a mentor. And so that's how it happened. Otherwise, we all say we got to do something. We never do it. So and it's a dream come true, because I thought of this 25, 30 years ago. When I was going to parties in Paris in the 60s or 70s, whatever I was doing, people say, what? And I'd say, I'm doing research. Guess what? It's come true. It was research.
You've legitimized everything.
For the book, yeah. Hello, everybody in Paris. I was doing research. That's really funny.
When you were remembering these stories and retelling the stories of your life, was there anything that changed the way you viewed it in your remembering of it?
Well, you know, in my remembering of it, I've done it in New York. I've done it in the comedy. I've done it in my one-woman show. And I'm shocked. I'm still shocked by what I did. But other people aren't shocked. You know, and I'm from Boston, a pure, conservative Jewish girl from Newton, Massachusetts. So even with all these stories, I have the feeling, I really shouldn't have done that or been there. And it's still the same thing. It's hysterical. What we grow up with stays with us forever. But, you know, well, there's reality, there's 2 parts of me. One is the American part, but I'm sure any expats who are listening to this will realize there's the other part. We have the French part. So there's like 2 sides to people like us. And that's what the book shows.
Interesting. So like your French side surprises your American side.
That's right. When I come to America, I play the game. I belong to this very conservative, fancy country club, golf club. I don't know whether they're going to talk to me after they read the book. Honest to God. I don't know.
How big of a part did Paris play in the story of your life?
Well, it changed my life. I was married and it didn't work out. I did everything a nice girl should do. It didn't work out. We were innocent. I got married in 58, before many of you were born. And we were innocent, totally innocent. At least I was. And things didn't work out. I mean, what's this all about? I've been looking forward to marriage. So after my divorce, I said, I'm going to Paris, because I had been there in 1955. And I got along great, went on a bicycle trip with the French kids and everything. And I had such a ball, I said, I'm going back to Paris after this divorce. And I went back and I decided, hell, the marriage didn't work out. The Bostonian conservative didn't work out. I'm going to do whatever I want to do because nobody knows. Paris. Nobody knows what's going on in Boston about. And I think that's a lot of us expats.
I think so too.
I have this feeling. Yay!
You can redefine yourself.
Yeah. But I was afraid to do it. But then when I started doing these stories in America, when I started comedy, people accepted it and they got a kick out of it. And I was amazed. And people come up to see me after my shows. Oh, I wish the older people, I lived a life like you. I missed out. And the young people said, oh, I hope I can be like you in my 80s. So it's very gratifying. What I'm shocked about, nobody's shocked about. Don't ask. I was born in 1934, ancient time. Different view of the world, different view. So thank God for Paris.
It's amazing. Just one trip, one place can change the trajectory of your life.
Oh, yeah. Well, I found out in 55 doing the camping with the French kids. And I went to Middlebury, but my other friends on the trip were in Wellesley or Harvard, etc. And there were 25 of us on this camping trip, bicycling all through France. And we slept out and we cooked out. And I got along with the French kids. And they were more up my wavelength than the Americans. So that's why I wanted to come back to Paris. Because I find that it's the wavelength for me. Much more.
Was there anything that surprised you in the writing of the book? Like in your writing process? Was there something new that you learned about yourself?
Oh, yeah. I had to go back and try to remember. And the hardest thing was remembering the dates. When did this happen? When did that happen? So I had to call up my niece, who was the only person left in my family around, and she knew the dates better than me. But, I've been reviewing these stories in my mind for years. So I know about them, but I never talk about them because people would be shocked. But I do it on the comedy stage because I never see them again. So it's all right. It's all right.
Like a crowd of anonymous people.
Anonymous people, and they love it, and I go in the audience. But, whatever. I was amazed how much I could remember. And now what the problem is, now that it's been out for a couple of months, I'm remembering more things that I should have put in the goddamn book.
My last question to you is, what do you think has been your biggest life lesson so far?
Oh, geez, that's a tough question.
Yeah, it's a light one to end on.
Well, to tell the truth, I've been doing fine because I do my sports. And, I got plenty of young friends because the old ones are dying. And but I had a heart attack in August. And that has thrown me for a loop in that I can't walk and breathe. There is a problem. I can talk and breathe. I can drive the car and breathe. I can swim and breathe. It's walking that's tough. So I got a pacemaker in, and we're doing PT, physical therapy, and I'm not back to normal. And what I've My life lesson I've learned is while you're healthy and you can do everything, do it. Don't wait for tomorrow. So that makes me realize all this stuff. In Paris, yeah, sure, I'm sort of guilty about it, but I'm glad I did it. Because now, it's a different story when you're 86. So that's the life lesson I've learned in the last 8 months. Because I want to go to Europe again. I want to walk around Paris, and I don't want to be out of breath. So I have a pacemaker, but we're trying to get there. Live and have fun now. That's my life lesson.
I think if your book and your life tells us anything, it's exactly that lesson. I mean, it really seems like you did everything there was to do.
I did. And I still have things I wanted to. I'm still trying. So with the New York doctors and everything, I've only been through 4 doctors. In New York, we go from 1 to 1 to 1. I've just decided if I can find the right guy or girl, woman, sorry.
We'll be right back with Storytime in Paris after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Storytime in Paris. You have treated us to a fabulous reading of your book. It's wonderful, really. It's very tantalizing. Can you tell us a little bit, can you set up the chapter for us a little bit?
Yeah, well, I was in Paris after the divorce, and what happened is that I started dating guys. You make a date on the street and blah, blah, blah. This is the way it was in the 60s. And so I dated a bit, and then I was curious about other things that go along in Paris. I was curious about the gay scene. I was curious about other scenes. So I was ready for anything because I figured I'd only be there a year. My parents were calling me up, when are you coming home? So I lived in Montparnasse near the Café Select. And so I would go there after I was at the Cité Universitaire, and I'd go there and I'd see it was interesting, artistic people, and I'd go there and sit, and being France in a cafe in the 60s, I would meet people, and one day a guy came up and says, I think I know what you would like. And, I was sort of shocked, but at this point I was ready for anything. And he was a teacher, a nice fellow. Okay. So me dropped my Boston conservatism and went with him. And that's the setup for this story that happened in the 60s and helped change my life. In fact, this evening, believe it or not, was one of the big changes of my life. Paris changed me. Well, in the 1960s, one evening I was sitting in the Café Select in Montparnasse when a smooth Frenchman started talking to me. The usual at first. Oh, bonsoir, mademoiselle. May I join you? My name is Jacques. What is yours? Oh, such a pretty name. Oh, and I love your accent. It is so charmant. So far, so unsurprising, but then, within 10 minutes of meeting me, he invited me to a party in a chic neighborhood of Paris, the 7th arrondissement. Oh, I knew this was very fancy. There are government ministries in the 7th, the Prime Minister's palace. Oh, yes, they have one palace for the president and another for the Prime Minister. Oh, and some very big mansions they call
Hôtel particulier. Hôtel particulier. Private hotels. As soon as the guy got me alone in the taxi, I understood that his party wasn't going to be a fancy reception with the Prime Minister. Oh, there will be dancing, he said. Oh, and something else. Something très sexy. And his fingers began to dance up my legs and underneath my skirt. I slapped his hand, but he just smiled. He knew what was coming next. We arrived at a big house, an hôtel particulier, very chic, and walked through a beautiful garden. In the house, two very sexy women told us to give them all of our clothes. Oh, our clothes? Do you mean our coats? I asked. Your clothes? You must be naked. Oh, no. No, not me. I'm just watching. No, you must be naked. I told them, no, thank you. I grew up in Boston. In Boston at parties, we keep our clothes on. Even when we have sex, we wear our pajamas. But the women were insistent. Vous devez dérober. You have to get undressed. I thought, oh, well, when in Paris. After dérobing, I went into the next room and sat on the corner of a huge bed. There were maybe 30 or 40 people there with no clothes on. It was so civilized. Everyone joking, laughing, talking, but all stark naked. Then discreetly, and not so discreetly, they began making moves on each other. I was shocked. I mean, at a get-together the other night, there were just 3 of us, pretty intimate. But here at the party, it was a whole naked crowd. Well, it was like getting it on in the public library. I've had nightmares exactly like that. I watched for a while, cringing, but gradually seeing them all get down to it. I got curious, and slowly, very slowly, I moved closer, and I joined in. I got it on with a man, and then a woman. Oh, then apparently everyone at the same time. Yes, I started swinging. And that night, in the chic 7th arrondissement of Paris, with all the different combinations that were going on, I became a new woman, a really happy woman. Inevitably, though, it was too good to be true. My satisfaction was a bubble waiting to burst, a champagne bubble about to lose its fizz.
We'll be right back with Storytime in Paris after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Storytime in Paris. All right, so where can we buy your book?
At Amazon.com, and it's called I Did It My Ways, with an S on the end, because my life was many different ways. And if you do get it and read it, enjoy it, give me 5 stars.
Absolutely. And I'll include links for everyone too, so they can go directly
that's
from
lovely. Thank you.
This show
Thank
description.
you.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for being with me, for talking to me. It's a delight to see you. Again, I find you inspirational and aspirational and all of that, really.
Oh, I love hearing that.
It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, my Lord.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. bonsoir, or bonjour, or whatever it is. Au revoir.
My guest today was Dionne Forrest. A huge thank you to her for being with us all the way from New York. You can find links to her book, I Did It My Ways, on her website, DionneForrest.com. That's DYANFOREST.com, or on Amazon. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity, and you can find me on all socials at Jennyphoria, JENNYPHORIA, and on my website, jennyphoria.com. Storytime in Paris was produced by me at Paris Underground Radio. For more information on this show and shows like it, please go to parisundergroundradio.com. Thank you for listening.